This is the 2017 AP Macroeconomics FRQs. Number 1, assume that the economy of country X has an actual unemployment rate of 7%, a natural rate of unemployment of 5%, and an inflation rate of 3%. Part A, using the numerical values given above, draw a correctly labeled graph of the short run and long run Phillips curves. Label the current short run equilibrium as point B. Plot the numerical values above on the graph. So here is your Phillips curve, inflation on the y-axis, unemployment on the x-axis, long-run Phillips curve vertical, short-run Phillips curve downward sloping. 5% or 5 is the natural rate of unemployment. 3% is the current rate of inflation. 7% is the current unemployment rate, which is at point B. Part B, assume that the government of country X takes no policy action to reduce unemployment. In the long run, will the SRAS shift to the right, left, or remain the same? So when unemployment is higher than the natural rate of unemployment, there's going to be a recessionary gap. If the government doesn't do any policy action, SRAS is going to shift back towards full employment. So in this case, since there's a recessionary gap, SRAS will shift to the right. Why? Because wages are now lower due to higher levels of unemployment. So remember, whenever the government does not take any policy action to return to long-run equilibrium, SRAS will shift in the direction that leads to full employment. Part B2, what about the long-run Phillips curve? What happens to that? So LRPC remains the same because there's no change in potential GDP or full employment output or the natural rate of unemployment. Without changes in any of those, LRPC remains where it is and it won't shift. C, identify a fiscal policy action that could be used to reduce the unemployment rate in the short run. So remember, fiscal policy deals with either changing government spending or changing taxes. In this case, you want to close the recessionary gap, which means you want AD to shift to the right. That can happen with either increased government spending or decrease in taxes. D, draw a correctly labeled graph of AD and SRAS and show the impact on the equilibrium price level and real GDP of the fiscal policy action in part C. All right, price level on the y-axis, real GDP on the x, downward sloping AD, upward sloping short run aggregate supply. Y1 is the current level of output. YF is full employment level of output at LRAS, which is to the right of current equilibrium, and that indicates a recessionary gap. What happens is with increased government spending or decrease in taxes, aggregate demand shifts to the right, restoring the output to full employment and increasing the price level to PL1. Based on the change in real GDP identified in Part D, will the supply of X's currency increase, decrease, or remain the same? So now that the price level in X has gone up, foreign goods are now cheaper. That means X's consumers are going to want to buy more foreign goods, which means they need more foreign currency to get those goods, which means they have to supply more country X currency to get that foreign currency. So the supply of country X's currency will go up, which means the value of country X's currency will depreciate due to the increase in supply of country X's currency. Part 2, assume that an economy is in long-run equilibrium. Assume that consumers wish to hold less money because they use credit cards more frequently to purchase goods and services than cash. A, draw a correctly labeled graph of the money market and show the effect of reduced holdings of money on the equilibrium nominal interest rate in the short run. So if there are reduced holdings of money, that's going to decrease the demand for money. So here is your money supply curve, money supply vertical, money demand downward sloping, and the y-axis is the nominal interest rate. Demand for cash is going to go down, which is going to lower the nominal interest rate. B1, based on the change in the interest rate in Part A, what will happen to the prices of previously held bonds in the short run? So remember, there is an inverse relationship between bond prices and interest rates. Since interest rates went down, bond prices will go up. So even if you don't remember how that works, you just have to remember that bond prices and interest rates are inversely related. What will happen to price level and real income in the short run? Now remember, real income is another way to measure real GDP. There's the expenditure model and the income model. So real income is just like real GDP, real output in terms of the direction. So interest rate goes down, that's going to increase investment and interest sensitive consumption. both of those will lead to an increase in aggregate demand, which leads to an increase in price level and real income. C, with a constant money supply, based on your answer to part B2, will the velocity of money increase, decrease, or remain the same, or is the change indeterminate? So the formula is MV equals PQ. M is the money supply, V is velocity, P is price level, and Q is real GDP. We know M is constant, and we know that the increase in aggregate demand caused both P and Q to increase. Since both P and Q increased and M is constant, V will also have to increase. D, if the central bank wishes to reverse the change in the interest rate identified in part A, what open market operation would it use? So since the interest rate is decreasing, the central bank wants to do something to cause the interest rates to go up. That happens by decreasing the money supply. The open market operation that corresponds with decreasing the money supply is selling bonds. 3, a country is at full employment and produces two types of goods, consumer goods and capital goods. Part A, draw a correctly labeled graph of the PPC, consumer goods on the horizontal and capital goods on the vertical axis. Indicate a point on your graph X that represents full employment and a possible combination in which both goods are being produced. So PPC, capital goods on the vertical, consumer goods on the horizontal. There's my PPC, it's bowed out. Yours can be a straight line, it doesn't really matter. X will go anywhere on the PPC, so you can put it anywhere you want. So I just put it in the middle just because. B, assume there's an increase in the country's national savings. Draw a correctly labeled graph of the loanable funds market showing the change in the real interest rate from the increase in savings. So loanable funds, interest rate, real interest rate on the y-axis, quantity of loanable funds on the x-axis. There is your graph. An increase in savings will shift the supply of loanable funds to the right. Loanable funds supply goes to the right, real interest rate decreases. Part C, on the same graph in Part A, show another point labeled Z that represents full employment and a new combination of consumer goods and capital goods consistent with the increase in the country's national savings. So Z can be anywhere on the PPC to the left of X. And the reason is increased investment due to lower interest rates. So lower interest rates, increased investment, that's going to lead to more capital goods. So point Z can be anywhere towards the capital goods end of the PPC. Part D, referring to your answer in Part C, will LRAS shift to the right, left, or remain the same? And because there's a lower interest rate, which leads to an increase in capital investment or capital stock, that's going to lead to long-run economic growth, which will cause LRAS to shift to the right. That's it for the 2017 test. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me whenever.